right, let's finish this off. Final thoughts on repurchases. Some of these are kind of repeat from the reasons why a firm would do a repurchase. Kind of links to like the advantages of doing a repurchase. So sorry for the repetition, but maybe it'll make it stick in your head more. Advantages of repurchases. So definitely some reasons why a firm does pursue these. They do send a positive signal because, again, it's an indication that management believes the stock is undervalued, because you should never, ever, ever do a repurchase if your stock is overvalued. You're actually destroying your shareholder value for the remaining shareholders, right? Like you're transferring wealth from the shareholders that are going to be left in the firm versus the shareholders who are selling you their stock back. Not good. So we typically think that it's a signal the stock is undervalued, meaning the price should go up in the future. I already mentioned this, but stockholders have a choice, right? If you want to participate in the repurchase, go for it. If you want to hang on to your stock, you can do that too. Whereas with dividends, right, you have to take the dividends. There is no opt-out box when it comes to receiving the dividend. And then you got to pay taxes on it. Dividends are sticky, meaning that we know that management doesn't really like to increase a dividend unless they know they can maintain it. And they definitely don't like to cut the dividend. So it's like my dividend's kind of stuck where it's at for the most part. And so if I want to give some extra money to my shareholders, I'm like, well, I don't want to touch the dividend, guys, unless I do like a special dividend. But if I don't want to do that for whatever reason, then, I'm left with share repurchases, basically, as a way to get rid of some temporary, extra cash flow that I have. It says it allows the use of the residual model to set a target distribution level. Remember, distributions, both of them. It's dividends and repurchases. So it allows us to use the model to set the distribution level that can then be divided into a dividend component and a repurchase component. So it gives us some flexibility there that we like. Already mentioned this previously. We can undertake large changes in capital structure. And we also already talked about the last one there, where we can use it to fulfill employee stock options. Good stuff. Now, disadvantages. We don't know for sure that shareholders are indifferent between dividends and repurchases. Maybe there is a strong preference out there that is not being serviced or fulfilled by firms for investors that would like to receive more dividends. Who knows? This is one of those areas that, none of this is set in stone. You can probably read the same, level of textbook in 20 years and it will say different information, because academics are still researching this. And I mean, when you're talking about like trying to predict investor behavior and investor preferences, come on, right? Like the entire world could be different in 20 years, and investor preferences may be one way today and a different way in 20 years. Tax laws could change. I mean, I don't know. What would be the impact of universal basic income? Would investors still want dividends? Things change over long time periods. And so investor preferences change. Right now, obviously, we think that there is a preference for repurchases, which is why, firms are distributing more cash that way than dividends. But we don't know that for sure. It's not like we can read the mind of our investors. We do know dividends are reliable. Repurchases are not. I mean, when a firm pays dividends, they are going to pay them every year, basically, unless they fall in some really, really bad times. And so I can expect as a shareholder of a dividend paying firm to receive that dividend every year. Whereas repurchases, I'm just sitting around twiddling my thumbs. Like, they could do a repurchase this month, or it could be 10 more months before they do, or 20 more months, or 2 weeks, right? You just don't know. I mean, and some firms have a history of doing it more often, more frequently on a regular basis, but not all firms do. So we definitely know that some investors like the reliability of dividends. So that's a disadvantage then for repurchases. Shareholders may not be fully informed. I say that's the shareholder's fault. Don't play the game if you don't understand the rules, kind of thing. But a lot of times firms, like I said, they do announce this. They do make it known to their shareholders that this is taking place to give everyone kind of a fair shot. And the last one down there, we already talked about too already. With going out and just buying it in the market, a firm has to be very careful to not overpay. right? They may end up causing a surge in demand for the stock. And, that surge in demand could push the stock price up. And then, that's not good. Because again, if it becomes overvalued, you're actually transferring wealth from your existing remaining shareholders to the shareholders who are leaving the firm by selling you back the stock. Some final conclusions on dividends versus repurchases, just as if you need to kind of cohese all this stuff together in your head. We know that repurchases definitely do have the tax advantage because they're not going to recognize that capital gain until the repurchase happens. And again, I always rather pay taxes later versus now. But we do know dividends are more dependable. That kind of leads us right back into clientele theory or the clientele effect, right? That certain investors will have a strong preference for wanting the tax advantage. Other investors are going to have a preference for wanting the dependability of a dividend, the reliability of a dividend. Second point there, to avoid volatile dividends, it would benefit a firm to set a dividend low enough to maintain that avoids constraining operations and then use repurchases to distribute excess cash. And that is what we see a lot of firms doing. That's that low regular dividend plus extra policy thing, that big hyphenated one. Set it nice and low to where you can always keep it. If you have some extra money, you go ahead and do a repurchase or issue a special dividend. Everyone stays happy. You get to pursue all the projects that you need to pursue to maximize firm value. We do know repurchases do come in handy, though, in some very unique situations, making those large changes in capital structure, distributing cash from one-time events like sales of large assets or divisions, and then also fulfilling those employee stock option plans, which we've talked about already. So that finishes us up with repurchases. I will do one more video on just wrapping up all of this and all of these different things that have to go into a firm's decision-making process when it comes to distribution policy decisions.